Norwich then through to the quarter-finals. Spurs out of the FA Cup. Four defeats in a row now, overall, for Jose Mourinho's side. This was the one lifeline. Maybe if he delivered some silverware, he would shut the critics up. But again, I feel like we're going down the same path when it comes to Mourinho and Spurs. Not good enough.
He made some changes. So did Norwich, to be fair. Made a couple, at least. They're at home against a team 4 points adrift of everyone in the Premier League. At home. Again. Took a kick up the backside for them to push a little bit towards the end before extra time. But Norwich dominated pretty much most of the normal time.
Yeah.
Again. So there's no other way to paint it. He's at the moment, it is a very negative picture at Tottenham.
And Craig's right in the fact that this wasn't Spurs battering Norwich, and maybe Norwich were lucky to get that late equaliser. They deserve this.
Yeah, this was an evenly played match that you would have thought, okay, well, these are two teams in which they're somewhere there or thereabouts close in the standings of the Premier League. That's not quite the case. When you look at Norwich, to further the point as to who Norwich is a team that has allowed 51 goals in the Premier League. So they aren't exactly a team that defensively does a lot of things well. Just to put it in perspective, 51 goals means that they're the second worst team defensively to Aston Villa in the Premier League. And so, if you're Spurs, this is the game to build confidence on. This is the game in which you knock the ball around. This is the game in which you create chances, you create opportunities, you score goals, you build momentum, and you turn the corner on what has been a negative period up until this point. But now what do you do? Because if you were looking for this to be a positive sign, and certainly it wasn't in the final result, it wasn't in the way that you play, it wasn't in the chances created, it wasn't in the goals scored. And so what do you do? What do you turn to and say, this is what we can hang on because we know that what we're doing works? At this point, you don't know that what you're doing works, and you're looking at the guy sitting over there on the bench, Jose Mourinho. Well, he's the guy that's going to lead us to titles. That's why he's here. And yet he's got a whole lot of questions to answer, and I'm not sure that he's going to be able to.
Gab, it was interesting listening to the latest edition of your podcast with Jules. You weren't pulling any punches when it came to Jose Mourinho, in particular the point that he made about July 1st.
Yeah, you can understand where it comes from, but there's certain things that you really shouldn't say. When you come out and you say, July 1st, and what he means by this is, I can't wait for it because then we hit the big reset button and we can bring in new players. And I inherited this team, and these aren't my players, and Eriksen and Vertonghen and Danny Rose and all this stuff. But the fact of the matter is, what you will achieve on July 1st, or what you can achieve on July 1st in terms of transfer budget, in terms of wages, that's going to be contingent on, or partly contingent on, whether you get in the Champions League this year. And Spurs were very well placed to certainly challenge Chelsea for that fourth spot. I mean, they still are. They're not a million points behind. So to go and kind of give the impression, which that quote does, that he's writing off the rest of the season and then we start from scratch next year, it just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. I have more of an issue with that than I do with going out Norwich against the FA Cup. It is kind of a whatever situation from his perspective. But advancing an extra round in Europe, getting into the Champions League next year, that means more money and more money to spend to rebuild and get the team that you want.
It's a way to go with your new players, isn't it? When you come in after a few weeks and you turn around and very publicly say, I can't wait for this season to be finished.
Yep.
A season that they've still a heck of a lot to play for. Still is. They're not out of the Champions League. It's unlikely the way they're playing, particularly at Leipzig. They're fighting for the top, I can't say top four, Champions League places because we don't know what's going to happen. For a team that had so much still to play for, to have a manager to go in and publicly basically say, I don't think I can get the results needed with this group of players. I think everybody, and probably Daniel Levy himself, was probably, and the board that Spurs were probably hoping maybe he had changed a little bit. He hasn't.
It's another form of deflection. It's another form of Captain Deflecto. It's another form of saying, this doesn't stick on me.
Right.
It has nothing.
It's the players that I inherited.
Yes, it has nothing to do with me. Look, I walked into here and it was a struggling team. What do you want me to do? I can't. Well, the truth is that his responsibility and his resume would suggest that he could come into that same locker room made of players that went all the way to the Champions League final a year ago, and he would make a difference. And people, Spurs fans, would suggest, yes, this changes our profile as a team. This changes who we are, because this guy has a whole different, broader view of how to do it, when to do it, and how to get the results that we need. And yet, what we have found is that there's been a step forward, 2 steps back. A step forward, 2 steps back. And every time there's a step back, it's everybody else except Jose Mourinho who is to blame. And in his mind, he'll come out and continue to have this rhetoric as if to say, nothing to see here, no problem. We're going to deflect it this way, we're going to deflect it that way, and it's never going to reflect on me.
He is without Kane, his best player, without Son as well. That surely makes a difference.
Not against Norwich.
Yeah, but I mean, at the end of the day, the last 4 games has been coming for a while. There was a smoke and mirrors game against Man City at home, which they won. Yeah. And really and truly, it's a minor miracle how that ever happened, apart from the fact they went down to 10 men. We're still looking at experienced players here. We're looking at new signings in Bergwijn. We're looking at Champions League experienced players like Lucas Moura. We know Lo Celso has been pretty good for him. I understand he hasn't got a striker, but I don't know. It's a hard one. I so hope that, and it might come, because I don't wish bad on Mourinho or anybody else, because I think he's had a fantastic track record and career, and I'm a part of me wants to see that fire burn again. To see if he can really come back and prove the doubters wrong. But the more I listen to him and the more I see his sides, I kind of think it's getting further and further away.
And in the conversation of the top 5, it's very difficult to put an argument at the moment from what we've seen from Spurs as to why they should be leading the conversation, because Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes, of course, has made a difference. Mikel Arteta has made a difference at Arsenal as well. Sheffield United look difficult to beat. Chelsea, of course, are ahead of everyone at the moment. Spurs are very much low down on that list, aren't they? Because what have you seen to inspire you to think, actually, I think Mourinho can really kick them up the backside over the next couple of months to make a run and get in the Champions League?
Well, they've got Burnley coming up. I think it's the next league game. Then they've got Leipzig. And then they've got the aforementioned Man United in the next few games. They've got Sheffield United in the next few games, who, by the way, when they played Spurs at home, completely outplayed them. I don't think he was there at the time, but there's no sense that Tottenham are going to put together a consistent run of performances. And I know we'll get to this, and Ali mentioned deflection tactics. He got the biggest deflecto tonight he ever wanted in the Eric Dier situation.
The conversation of the top 5, it's very difficult to put an argument at the moment from what we've seen from Spurs as to why they should be leading the conversation, because Manchester United, Bruno Fernandes, of course, has made a difference. Mikel Arteta has made a difference at Arsenal as well. Sheffield United look difficult to beat. Chelsea, of course, are ahead of everyone at the moment. Spurs are very much low down on that list, aren't they? Because what have you seen to inspire you to think, actually, I think Mourinho can really kick them up the backside over the next couple of months to make a run and get in the Champions League?
Well, they've got Burnley coming up. I think it's the next league game. Then they've got Leipzig. And then they've got the aforementioned Man United in the next few games. They've got Sheffield United in the next few games, who, by the way, when they played Spurs at home, completely outplayed them. I don't think he was there at the time, but there's no sense that Tottenham are going to put together a consistent run of performances. And I know we'll get to this, and Ali mentioned deflection tactics. He got the biggest deflecto tonight he ever wanted in the Eric Dier situation.
Well, let's talk about the Eric Dier situation. Just put it into context with us here in the studio. We were just about to record the show. Footage then emerged, obviously, on social media. And at first, we weren't even sure if it was really Eric Dier. And then, of course, it became clearer and clearer that it was the England international. So as we go to air now, news is pretty fresh. Facts are still pretty sketchy. But Gav, I understand Jose Mourinho has addressed it.
Yeah, Jose Mourinho addressed it and suggested that a family member, his Eric Dier's younger brother, was in the stands. There was some kind of altercation, some abuse was directed at his younger brother, and at which point Eric Dier basically hopped the fence and jumped up and ran up, and ran a long way actually, up into the stands. Stewards certainly intervened. He was taken away. Mourinho said that, this is something that, maybe professional footballers have felt like doing when a family member is abused on their behalf, but it's not something that as a professional, you can do. Those are the facts that we've established or that have been pretty much confirmed thus far. The rest, there's a wild swirl of rumors out there, which we don't need to get into.
Yeah, a lot of rumours doing the rounds, and as Gab said, we can only really deal with what Jose Mourinho says about it and what we...
Well, I'll tell you what we do know. I'll tell you what we do know. We do know that supporters are not allowed to enter the field of play or come over the barriers. We also know there is no excuse for a player entering the stands. Can't condone that. I understand family abuse. Supporters get very angry at times. I've seen it. Spoken to my parents and other family after games, and they tell you what's been said about every player. It doesn't give you the right to jump into a crowd and confront the issue. It doesn't. And he is going to be in some severe trouble when all this unravels.
There is absolutely, and I mean absolutely, nothing to gain from Eric Dier. Even if it was done in the best intentions to defend his brother, there's everything to lose from his perspective. You cannot, must not, will not, simply cannot do it. You cannot go on the stands, because at that point you open up a whole can of worms that you don't want any part of. And this will give people something to talk about other than the facts about what's going on with this team and Spurs, and yet another disappointing performance.
Well, we do have an answer now, in the sense that the government took over, and ultimately they're the ultimate authority. And they said for the next month until April 3rd, all outdoor sporting events are to be played behind closed doors. In other words, with no fans in attendance. And the league reacted to it by saying, okay, fine, we're not going to postpone any games. We're going to go ahead this weekend with effectively last week's schedule. So Juventus against Inter will be played on Sunday night, as was supposed to happen a week ago.
Gab, obviously we've seen Italy affected, well, one of the most out of all the countries that have had the coronavirus. Have they set a precedent now on what we could see other leagues around Europe? Well,
certainly. I mean, the Premier League, they had a talk on Monday about how they're going to handle this should the situation degenerate in England as well. The contingency plan in the Premier League will be also to play behind closed doors. Postponing fixtures is really difficult to do with the European Championships, of course, coming up in the summer. It's difficult to do because you don't know when these restrictions could end. And it creates sort of a very unbalanced fixture list and league table, because some teams have played more games, others fewer games. So that seems to be the consensus way to go, should the authorities decide that it is warranted. More closely, UEFA are still monitoring the situation in terms of their ties. There is also the possibility that locally things could change. Valencia, for example, set to play Atalanta next week. The local authority in Valencia has suggested that game could be played behind closed doors as well.
Well, on that subject, Gam, Juventus against Lyon, of course, in the Champions League, come within that window, don't they, of up to April the 3rd for that second leg. That game will be behind closed doors as well.
It certainly does. It doesn't seem as if there's really any alternative to it. The other possibility that some people had mooted about, why don't we go play these games somewhere else, somewhere in areas that are not affected, possibly in different countries. That idea, I think, has also come and gone because the authorities also feel that the last thing that you need is large quantities of fans from affected area going to travel somewhere else. So while there hasn't been official confirmation on that yet, it does appear nearly certain that that's what's going to happen.
Looking ahead to that second leg, how big a game changer is that? The fact that it will be behind closed doors, that Juventus won't have their fans in attendance to support them, given they're 1-0 down.
I mean, it's not. I can't give you a definitive answer because I've never been in that situation. But I can imagine clearly you've got your raucous home support normally behind you in a new modern stadium that creates a great atmosphere, and it's a push, it's a buzz for these top players, and you've now got a Champions League game which will be played almost like you're playing a game in training, and that's difficult. I mean, that's really difficult, but it is what it is.
People may not understand when Craig says it's difficult. I say, well, what's the difference? You're out there playing. When you don't have the atmosphere in the stadium, it really does take away from the game. As a player, you feed off of that energy. You feed off of that atmosphere. And when it's not there, you're searching for something to provide that energy, to provide that urgency. You know very well you're in a Champions League matchup. You know very well that it's a game that you have to win if you're Juventus. And yet, it's one of those where generating that energy is not going to come from anywhere else. And so the preparation and the coach and the players, they have to be very much in tune with what is it that they're going after, what are the objectives, and focus on those things rather than the fact that there's nobody in the stadium.
Gab?
I think without question, everybody who's done it has been affected. It's also the difference between, playing in a 50,000 seat stadium when, for one reason or another, there's only 5,000 or 6,000 people there. It does mess with you. It does affect you. One big knock-on effect also that we haven't talked about is also, it hits you in the pocketbook because these fans will need to be refunded as well. I think more broadly, what's worrying the authorities is how long will this go on, and at some point could it spill over into the Euro? And there's an economic argument that's been floated by some, is that if it does extend to other countries that have to put these restrictions in place, is there the possibility, and this would be extreme, and it is just a suggestion right now, might there be the possibility of extending the season right into June, and of course that would mean moving the Euros to next summer, which would also create a bit of a logistical mess, but perhaps that might be something that comes into the discussion. But right now, all of this is premature. The issue is really circumscribed from a public health perspective to just the one country in terms of it impacting sporting events.
Welcome into Extra Time. Thank you for your tweets. It's the last day before Craig goes on holiday for 2 weeks. What a moment for us all.
Sun cream?
Yeah. Woo!
Not.
But you're going somewhere sunny, aren't you? Hopefully, in theory.
And warm.
As long as black clouds don't follow you there. Has Jose Mourinho made Tottenham worse than when Poch was in charge?
Well, he's not made them better.
Nope. Obviously out today, losing to Norwich.
People always say about how they were in 14th, I believe it was, and they were having a hard time, and maybe it was a little stale, but it wouldn't have remained that way. I'm not saying it would have been exhilarating,
Yeah.
but they wouldn't have remained in 14th. So it's a fallacy to say, oh, Mourinho's got them up into this Champions League challenging position. I would have imagined he would have got enough results to be somewhere similar.
I hope that being in a Champions League challenging position is not good enough for a fan base like Spurs.
Yeah,
Because everybody's in a challenging position in Champions League this year in the Premier League.
Would you rather see Harry Kane at Barcelona or Real Madrid?
Ooh.
Something you brought up, wasn't it, a couple of weeks ago? If you're Harry Kane, maybe you're looking around now.
There's a story
thinking,
floating around the UK this morning, I believe, that it was, and I don't know the source of it, but saying he is more open to a move than a rebuild. I think his patience is maybe...
You would understand that,
Oh, I completely. What was the question?
Barcelona or Real Madrid?
Ooh, I like Real Madrid.
Yeah. Gab, what do you think? Out of those two?
It's a really good question. I mean, on paper, you'd probably lean Barcelona in some ways, just simply because Luis Suarez is is older than Karim Benzema, but by the same token, obviously Harry Kane is a better player than either one. What I would say is that Real Madrid might make more sense because you wouldn't have to go and adapt his whole game to playing with Lionel Messi for better or for worse. And I also think Zidane is probably has more of a hold over his team and the way they play and the way he wants them to play than Quique Setién.
Good enough for both those sides?
I think so. And I would say actually Barcelona.
Oh, really?
Because what have we seen from Antoine Griezmann is his inabilities or unwillingness to stay in a central position to finish opportunities inside the 18-yard box. Well, if you're Harry Kane, you tell him, hey, Harry, you stay there, buddy.
Yeah.
That's it. We're going to serve you the ball. You're going to score the goals. And you have somebody who can serve the ball in Lionel Messi. So, hey, guess what? Your job is very simple. It's simplified. You don't have to be running the channels and all, none of that nonsense. Stay inside the 18-yard box. Somebody will find you. You finish the opportunities.
Have you ever played a football match behind closed doors? How hard is it to maintain your intensity in these sort of games? Have you ever done it?
On the reserve games back
Right.
when you were playing, and what do they call it? Would they call it reserves?
And it's under 23s now, isn't it?
Yeah, it's changed now. But back then, it was all the pros that weren't. Kids coming up from the youth team, pros who were coming back from injury, and those that were left out. So, and you used to play it at all the stadiums. So if you played Chelsea reserves, were playing Spurs reserves away, you'd go to the old White Hart Lane and play in an empty stadium. And it was a good experience for, particularly if you're 17 or 18, and you're playing in the youth team on a Saturday, effectively at the training ground, and you go and sample these stadiums. But from a perspective of an experienced pro, like all these guys in the Champions League are going to be, I think that's difficult.
Gab, you must have you covered games with empty stadiums? Oh, Gab, what a lovely face. Obviously something.
Oh, he's back. He's back.
Yes, I have, although I think it was I can't remember when. I have a distinct memory of it, but
Well, clearly.
The frozen answer
It
was
was at
much
some
better,
point in
Gab.
the
Thank you very
90s.
much. Good, right.
sorry.
Okay.
Go with Craig's answer.
You should have seen, actually, Gab, you won't get to see it, and somebody might be able to send that. You want to see the still of this when we come back to you there. It was.
It's brilliant.
It was.
Craig on
Thank you.
holiday.
It looked as if you'd finally had enough of life and this conversation.
People in Scotland are excited, Craig.
Oh.
Yeah, about the.
McGinn, McTominay, Gilmore. Might Scotland have a better midfield than England?
No.
Huh?
Well, I think obviously it's what a lot of people do. They start looking way ahead. Young Billy Gilmore,
Yeah.
18, terrific performance in amongst the men. For one so young, but there's a long way to go. I've seen plenty of it over the years. Super talent coming through and not able to keep it going for the required 10 years. So, but yeah, it's an exciting. It's certainly better options, but it's maybe a bit soon for him. And he's only played, I think, something like three games or something for Chelsea. You can't, you don't catapult somebody into an international team. Unlikely that is after such little experience.
Final question, Gab. Why does the Gab and Jules podcast not have a section where viewers can tweet in questions and you and Jules answer them?
Yeah, come on now.
But I had a phone call from Stevie yesterday who listened to the Gab and Jules podcast, actually, Gab, for the first time. And he said, I don't know why anybody else's name is in the title because it's just Gab talking.
It's so not true. It's a lot of Jules as well. We even had Mark Ogden for some light relief last week, and Sid Lowe. We had 4 different voices on. I don't know what he's talking about. It's already an hour. There's so much to talk about. We pack so much stuff in there, mostly me, admittedly, that I've been told people don't like listening to podcasts that run too long. That is the reason why. But generally, hashtag Gab and Jules Show. You can reach me or Jules, and we're more than happy to answer your questions on social media.
Was you being facetious? Did Steve listen to it?
Yes, he did.
Steve Nicol?
Yes.
How did he get it?
It was on Sirius, apparently. Well, somehow it was. I don't even know if it was really on Sirius.
Right, he's
No, it is on Sirius. We're being told. Apparently, it is.
It is on Sirius. Yes.
Oh, there we go. It is on Sirius. He said he was listening to it.
Oh, sorry, they patch it onto Sirius.
Must do, yes.
Right, because there's no way he's pressed a button apart from the radio.
I was trying to teach him how to get podcasts, weren't we, yesterday?
Yes.
And how did that go?
I don't think it went very well.
Was it successful?
It's Stevie. That is it then, Craig. Have a lovely holiday.
Yes, sir.
2 weeks.
We will.
2 weeks, eh?